Hello, we are meeting again. I'm so happy we have now the second colloquium in this semester. I would like to say hello to you, to all of you, and also to our president, Klaus Mainzer, to our vice-president, Ioannis Liritsis. I would like to ask you, both of you, to make some presentation, short beginning, official beginning of our colloquium today. Please.
Yeah.
Ioannis, you can begin first. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Violeta. And really, I'm most satisfied, and I congratulate you to see that our initiative 5 years ago to continue and get enriched with novel topics. And now for this evening subjects, very different than everything else in the past. I'm looking forward really to learn more on the innovative approach of Dr. Bargrizan, an approach often met in art and literature and design or architecture. That means that values mixing styles, cultures, while rejecting, and this is very interesting, rigid ideological frameworks in favor of open-ended exploratory methods. This is the non-ideological experimentation. I look forward to listen to this aesthetic philosophy that promotes actually freedom, fluidity, and innovation by blending these influences and rejecting ideological constraints. On the other hand, I also am eager to listen to Marisa Dalla, Chiara, how she will explore the way quantum computing principles can enhance the recognition of abstract patterns like musical motifs or conceptual similarities by leveraging quantum aspects of uncertainties and ambiguities, maybe involving superposition, entanglement, probabilistic logic. I don't know, I will see. This approach indeed allows for more efficient and nuanced pattern matching compared to classical methods, and potentially revolutionizes how machines interpret complex structured data such as the music or language. So for both of them, I'm looking forward indeed with great eager, both lectures.
Thank you so much, Klaus.
Yeah.
Klaus, may I ask you, please?
Yes, thank you, and good evening to all members of the European Academy and our guests. At first, let me remind you, we are still in the old presidency. That means Johannes is now in the function of Dean of Class 4, and we will start with the new presidency 24 of November. Okay, now once again, I would like to welcome you all to the continuation of this wonderful event, which was organized in the beginning by Violeta and Johannes, and then later on by Dušan Šuput as Dean of Class of Medicine. Tonight, we continue our discussion from last evening on quantum mechanics and music. Professor Dalla Chiara is the grande dame of quantum logic in Italy. I have known her work on this topic since the 1970s and 80s. In this time, I was an assistant and later on a young professor. And nowadays, these deeply foundational research leads to quantum computing. That means future technology with great breakthroughs in the United States and in China. They are competing about quantum computing, but also Europe. For example, the small country Salzburg, Austria. We have a Nobel Prize winner in this academy, Anton Zeilinger, who was engaged in the foundations of quantum mechanics and nowadays up to quantum computing, and Italy, Germany, and so on. But since Professor Della Chiara also studied aesthetics and philosophy, she became interested in the expressive possibilities of quantum formalism for art very early. In my introduction at our last evening, I already mentioned that in contrast to classical physics, uncertainties and superposition of states are typical of the quantum world. Interestingly, the mathematical foundations of quantum mechanics were laid in the 1920s, when blurs and in-between modes were also considered in art and music. For me, blues and jazz are typical examples of these in-between modes which even extend into pop music. Not either joy or sadness, but something in between. In her work, Professor Dalla Chiara has also shown how the formalism of quantum mechanics can be used as a musical language in classical songs. I remember a wonderful talk of her here in our lecture series about German romantics, for example, Schubert, and she analyzed how quantum mechanics can apply to the structure analysis of this kind of music. Once again, it has been shown that this mathematical language is by no means limited to the physical world of elementary particles, but captures invariant structures of music. The application of quantum mechanics also shows that music is by no means limited to concepts and structures as they are defined in the Western musical tradition. This general foundation of aesthetics is the subject of the second lecture this evening. In his abstract, the author, Professor Bargrizan, composer and musicologist, announces how different musical structures can be integrated in a hybrid way, using various musical examples, thereby overcoming ideological restrictions. We can look forward to seeing how new creative and inspirational possibilities open up in this way. Once again, I wish you a lively and thought-provoking discussion this evening, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Klaus, for the correction you gave about the situation now in our academy. And I would like to tell you that we begin first with Navid Bargrizan, because it is a program. And I would just say 2 words about Navid. Navid Bargrizan, American musicologist and composer with background from Caucasus and Germany. He studied musicology, art history, composition in Hamburg, Florida, and has taught music history, theory, composition also in German. Navid's composition explored microtonality, a lot of incredible complex aspects of music. As a musicology, he has also published standard studies. Please unmute yourself. Okay, and he made very important researches about other composers, Manfred Stanke, Harry Patch, Luigi Nono, Mozart, Roger Waters, vocalist Carla Henius, and he currently writes 2 books for publication simultaneously. So please, Navid, may I invite you to begin your lecture?
So, do you hear me? Okay, good evening, everybody. Dear Violeta, thank you for your invitation and patience with me as I had to cancel my presentation once for unanticipated health reasons. Thank you so much for your introductions and your esteemed colleagues. Thank you for attending my presentation. It's my honor to speak about my music philosophical and cultural ideas. as well as compositional aesthetic and artistic approach in the context of case studies that exemplify my ventures. I will appreciate your comments and questions, and my apologies for too much first-person voice in this presentation that you might perceive as egomania. Honestly, not often I get the chance to speak about my compositions and views. Therefore, today I embrace the risk of being labeled egomaniac. I essentially compose not to bore myself, composing as an intellectual activity to experience new ideas, perspectives, and sound structures. I do not seek to express some sort of major philosophical, ideological, or artistic manifesto. It's much simpler for me. Just an activity to keep myself busy, to feel better about my world, and to delve into a meaningful activity that requires certain degree of skill, perhaps a sort of self-psychotherapy, to avoid extreme neurosis and depression, or a self-reflective tool. But I also compose for people who possess eagerness to explore innovative sound structures. Excuse me, I forgot to share my slides. Just please bear with me for 1 second. Okay, here we go. Do you see my slides?
We saw it at the beginning. Now I don't see it anymore.
Okay, excuse me, I'm not sure. I'll try one more time. Is it fine now? Yes?
No? Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great, thank you, I appreciate it.
We see it.
Yes.
Thank you for the compliment. Okay, but I also compose for people who possess eagerness to explore innovative sound structures. If my compositions allow communication with interested people, I feel happy. Human interaction with like-minded and open-minded people, as well as not like-minded and perhaps not so open-minded but friendly people. I'm thinking about Who Cares If You Listen, the controversial title given to Milton Babbitt's iconic article by his editor. I should say that I do care if you listen, however, if you do not care to listen, I understand. Yet, I do not compose a music tailored for relaxation or entertainment. Therefore, microtonal fabrics, tuning systems, and intonational experiments, as much as fixed and multimedia soundscapes, provide me fertile ground for musical expression without absolute conceptual and structural dependency on pre-existing formulas prevalent in Western art music. Within this context, hybridity, acoustical or psychoacoustical groundworks, and ethnomusicological research free from ideological constraints enhance preordained melo-harmonic constructions, granting me a notable palette of sonic possibilities. In the following case studies, I will expound on tuning methods, micro-intonational approaches, and techniques of digital sound manipulation that have allowed me to synthesize diverse attitudes. Influenced by composer thinkers such as Harry Parch, Georgi Ligeti, and Manfred Stanke, geographically distant schemes such as the Asgah concept of the Persian music and the Balinese gamelan merge in my chamber works with just intonation, extended equal temperaments, and synthetic microtonal scales, as much as acoustical phenomena, for instance, partial and residual tones or psychoacoustical notions of difference tones, subharmonics. My acousmatic music also manifests hybridization, often reconciling recorded concrete and electronically produced sounds with impressions drawn from literature and visual arts, among others. I will demonstrate examples of how I have forged melo-harmonic structures that manifest no central musical ideology, rooted in an objective and impartial examination of diverse cultures worldwide to elevate my personal boundaries of sensory perception and contemplation. This stance has encouraged me to explore, then compose hybrid configurations that reflect flexible theoretical and aesthetic frameworks aloof from commercialized art without adherence to established norms and market dogmas. In 2019, I composed the solo viola piece titled Kupferteich, commissioned by and dedicated to veteran composer, musicologist, and viola performer Manfred Stanke, my mentor, idol, and dear friend. In fact, the title Kupferteich, or copper pond in English, refers to an eponymous idyllic body of water in front of Manfred's house in Hamburg, Germany. In this work, I intertwine multiple threads of microtonality, forging a hybrid melo-harmonic structure. Manfred himself often synthesizes various layers of tuning and intonational concepts that interact simultaneously. This inclusive compositional aesthetic that substantiates several of Manfred's works inspired me at the core of my concept for Kupferteich.
Excuse me, may I ask you to unmute everybody, to mute everybody in order to, please.
This piece primarily employs an innovative just intonation scale that Manfred developed and made available to me. A selection of the first 16 overtones of a C fundamental tone and the first 14 overtones of a G fundamental tone simultaneously underpin the scale, which makes the use of an array of unequal microintervals possible. In Kupferteich, parts of the melodic web and the harmonic formation of the piece realized largely through chordal double, triple, and quadruple stops in the viola stand on this scale. I then juxtapose such sections based on this scale with melodic fragments borrowed from Dastgah Nava, a modal system in Persian classical music, as you see at the bottom of the screen. May I ask if the sound came through? Did you hear that? If you would confirm, I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Mr. Gleiter, please, can you mute yourself? This is a problem that we interrupt, your voice is interrupting, please. I don't know how to do it here. Ask, please, Mr. Gleiter. Yeah. Continue, excuse me, Navid.
That's fine, thank you. The microintervals embedded in these Dastgah Nava melodic segments are approximated to accommodate the aforementioned just intonation-based scale. This superimposition of fine-tuned intonational fabrics, therefore, constitutes the conceptual foundation of Kupferteich. For the sake of clarity of notation and practicality, in the score, the deviations from the 12-tone equal temperament are approximated to 12th, 6th, and quarter tones, featured by means of numbers plus microtonal accidentals. The microtonal nature of the Persian classical music provides a path toward adopting such Dastgah Nava fragments monophonically, juxtaposing them with the homo and polyphonic sections of the piece. In this musical tradition, the microintervals shown on this slide, which deviate from the intervals embedded in the 12-tone equal temperament, prevail. The piece by no means intends to achieve just intonation or a Persian sound. It rather manufactures a unified fabric that integrates aspects of the aforementioned elements with its own sonic character and logic, representing none of these elements in their totality. From a broader cultural perspective, Kupferteich articulates the dialogue between distinct musical traditions. It seeks to contrive an artwork beyond the common cliches and tropes predominant in traditional genres, styles, and forms.
Machst du nicht ansehen. Eigentlich ist da viel dran von dem, was Sie sagen.
I searched for connections, bridges, in the piece titled Pictures at the Micro Exhibition for solo alto saxophone commissioned by Harn Museum of Art in Gainesville, Florida. Inspired by a miniature album of paintings by Japanese artist Watanabe Shotai, on view in the Show Me the Mini exhibition at the Harn, and composed for Swiss saxophonist, improviser, composer, and multimedia artist Laurent Stoppé, this piece transforms the visual elements in the paintings, such as line, form, color, impressions from nature, to musical elements, let's say rhythm, meter, pitch, scale, melody. It builds on natural harmonics to allude to the predominant element of nature in the mini painting, as well as the Japanese microtonal pentatonic scales and Russian composer Modest Mussorgsky's infamous piece, Pictures at an Exhibition, composed in 1874. Shotai lived roughly around the same time as Mussorgsky. That meant to me the first bridge. He went to Paris to absorb the Western style of painting, including Impressionism, which he later fused with Japanese traditional paintings as his mini exemplify. At the same time, Mussorgsky's proto-impressionistic music impressionists, which meant to me a second bridge. As a third bridge, I also drew parallel between Shotai's mini tableaus and Mussorgsky's musical tableaus in his piece, basically a series of correlated paintings. As I was composing the work inspired by mini paintings at an art exhibition, I thought of Mussorgsky composing his aforementioned piece, also inspired by selected pictures at an art exhibition. I transformed the term mini to which not only implies Shotai's small format artworks, but also my use of microtonal elements. That informs a fourth bridge.
Excuse me, I have to stop you again because I don't find here the possibility to Mr. Gleiter. Please, do you hear me? can you please put mute or just don't speak anymore because it's interrupting? Excuse me, I don't find here the place where I can put you mute. Excuse me, Nadine, can you continue?
No, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Then I thought of the movement titled The Old Castle in Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition, an iconic piece of saxophone repertoire. After all, I was also going to compose for saxophone, and this meant a fifth bridge. I actively focused on Mussorgsky early on and borrowed, then arranged his music as contrasting melodic, non-microtonal interludes in between my microtonal movements, as a means of juxtaposing familiar and equal-tempered, meaning Mussorgsky, and unfamiliar, non-equal tempered, meaning mine. Finally, as a sixth bridge to Japan and small format paintings, I drew inspiration from the Japanese microtonal pentatonic scales, then designed and employed my own synthetic microtonal pentatonic scales, also inspired by just intonation or pure tuning that refers to the element of nature predominant in the paintings. My scale also employs 12th, 6th, quarter, half, and whole tones. For instance, the first scale that you see in the red box on the screen. Now that we have arrived in the land of saxophone, let us speak about 10 aphorisms. Oxford English Dictionary defines aphorism as a definition or concise statement of a principle in any science, or any principle or precept expressed in few words. In December 2014 in Berlin, I was enthralled by reading the aphoristic writings of Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Wittgenstein, while simultaneously thinking about a compositional concept for the North Carolina-based saxophone duo called Stax Duo. The idea of composing 10 concise musical aphorismic statements sounded compelling. But what is the principle or precept that these aphorisms would feature? This piece intends to break through the boundaries of equal temperament up to the 13th partial in the overtone series through adopting Manfred Stanke's principle of difference tone harmony. As evident in his opera Orpheus Crystal, for instance, Manfred has developed a harmony system based on the psychoacoustical phenomenon of difference tones, lower frequencies that under certain acoustical conditions might emerge psychoacoustically in our inner ears. Then, two adjacent higher frequencies sound simultaneously. In each of my aphorisms, the soprano saxophone realizes solely two pitch classes from the spectrum of partials based on a D fundamental, a different ratio in each aphorism and up to the 13th harmonic. The tenor saxophone then conceives the calculated quadratic and cubic difference tones of each ratio, resulting in a lively instrumental interplay in dense microtonal structures. This piece also alludes to folk traditions, for instance, the interlacing rhythmical configuration of aphorism number 3 that I'm going to play next, vaguely references wedding ceremonial music in the north of Iran. In 1957, Noam Chomsky composed the sentence, "Colorless green ideas sleep furiously," to demonstrate how syntax and semantics are related, but could function independently. This sentence is grammatically and structurally correct, but in terms of the meaning, it does not make sense. As an homage to one of the greatest contemporary thinkers, this piece, composed in 2023, poses the question, should a musical work with its independent syntactical structure make sense semantically? Superimposed on a background of recorded and processed sounds, the low brass performer improvises inspired by those sounds in addition to a graphic musical score that consists of syntactic tree diagrams borrowed from linguistics, meant to vaguely guide the improvisations. A flexible choreography of corporeal mise-en-scène that can be adapted according to individual performance venues supplements the electronic playback and live on-stage music. The electronic playback includes recorded trombone, euphonium, and tuba sounds, as well as recorded resonances of the piano strings by playing the brass instruments directed toward inside the piano and then, of course, alienated, manipulated. While paying homage to Chomsky and commenting on the relationship between musical syntax and semantics in an abstract, artistic manner, this work stresses the importance of superimposition, simultaneity, and de-hierarchization, as well as cross-disciplinary reflection in the world of progressive art. The excerpt I'm going to play is a version for electronic sounds and percussion performed by my colleague at East Carolina University, Dr. Quentin Mallet. Tuning exercise number 8, composed for and dedicated to Galen Trio, is the 8th in an ongoing series of chamber ensemble pieces that address tuning and intonation from diverse angles. This piece pays homage to two of my favorite songs and bands, Aqualung from the eponymous 1971 album by Jethro Tull, and Shine on You Crazy Diamond from the 1975 album Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. It integrates disguised and distorted themes from these two works, combined with quarter-tone scordatura, or unusual strings tuning, as well as extended timbral techniques and flageolets in the strings, while the structure and tuning of the piano remains relatively traditional throughout. Tuning exercise number 8 aims to create a hybrid microtonal fabric that articulates fine listening and interfusion. Galen Trio, based in Athens, Greece, who commissioned, performed, and recorded this piece, will also premiere their second commission from me titled Eutonality, tuning exercise number 9, on the coming July 5th, 2025 at the Mozarteum, Salzburg. I have cherished, absorbed, and happily emulated Manfred Stein.
Navid, excuse me, it's very late. How long? May I ask you? 5 minutes, okay?
It's shorter than that. It's going to be like a minute or two.
Oh, excuse me. Bye-bye.
Oh, that's fine. I appreciate you letting me know. I have cherished, absorbed, and happily emulated Manfred Stankes in his own words, wässriges System, meaning freely recombining and resynthesizing elements from various musical traditions with mathematical, acoustical, and psychoacoustical concepts, forging innovative sonic fabrics that expand or restructure the common practice, as well as post and neo-common practice aesthetics, often interwoven in micro-rhythmical and microtonal intricacies. I compose to broaden my horizon, draw inspirations from a multitude of sources, and respond to my ever-growing sense of discovery. Therefore, the notion of cultural appropriation in this particular instance of compositional approach does not make sense to me. Although rather intuitively, I follow Ligeti's view of music composition as analogous to scientific research, where the composer posits a compositional question seeks to address the question within the matrix it creates, and attempts to achieve a coherent musical structure. I might equally rely on intuition or inspiration and on a structuralism or theory, and do not follow an artistic ideology fixed in stone. Instead, I experiment. The progressive music that experiments rather than just imitating what has been done previously has been marginalized. It breeds in niche, but it does exist. It does breed. Commercial classical music, let's say Chopin's and Puccini's, and contemporary composers who still compose in romantic tonal and post-romantic post-tonal styles remain, however, at the forefront, because most audiences only feel comfortable and safe to hear what they know, ingrained in their memory. As a composer, I, however, do not care to create works that lean towards the commercial axis. Therefore, my music also breeds in niche. It is marginalized, but it exists. The art world is fortunately diverse. It does not only include hermetic experimental art music, or commercial classical music, or pop. We need this diversity. We need choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Navid, so much. The discussion will come at the end after the second lecture. And
Yes,
I'm very happy
thank
now
you.
to say hello to Dušan. Dušan, you just have only to
Finally, I managed
invite.
to join, and it's really my privilege to greet again our member, Maria Luisa Dalla Chiara, who will give a very complimentary lecture, I think. And please give your presentation. Thank you.
Many thanks. Now I'll try to share my slides. I do hope that I will succeed. Do you see the slides? Yes?
Perfect.
We see it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Well, so first of all, I would like to thank warmly Violeta for her invitation, and also Klaus Mainzer for his nice and kind introduction. I'm really very happy to be again here and to participate again in this splendid series of colloquia. My talk is based on a joint work with Roberto Giuntini, who is a logician, mainly a quantum logician, and Eleonora Negri, who is a musicologist, and both of them are connected with us today. So let me begin. There is a story about a king who was able to distinguish between two different pieces of music only, the royal march and the non-royal march. Of course, our king represents an extreme case of a non-musical personality. Normally, people behave differently, and children often show an early capacity of recognizing and repeating some simple songs they have listened to. Now, recognizing a musical theme is a cognitive operation that is very similar to what happens when we recognize an abstract concept that may refer either to concrete or to ideal objects, say table, circle, beautiful. Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Well, now it is working again. So the question arises, how are abstract concepts recognized and classified on the basis of some previous experience? According to a famous approach to psychology, the so-called Gestalt theory, human perception and knowledge of object is based on our capacity of realizing a gestalt, a form of the objects in question. When we recognize as a table a new object we have made in our environment, we generally make a comparison between the main features of the new object and the table gestalt that we had constructed in our mind. So we can ask, but can such recognition processes that are so natural for human minds be simulated by a mathematical concept that might be taught to an intelligent machine? And this question can be successfully investigated in the framework of a quantum approach to pattern recognition. Consider an agent, let us call her Alice, who is interested in a given concept, say a table or beautiful. The name Alice may denote either a human or an artificial intelligence. And we suppose that our Alice, on the basis of her previous experience, has already recognized and classified a given set of objects for which the question, does the object under consideration verify the concept C, can be reasonably asked. And we assume that the possible answers to this question are either yes or no, or perhaps. While a human Alice may have seen the objects under consideration, seeing is, of course, more problematic for an artificial Alice. Thus, generally, one shall make recourse to some theoretic representation that describes the objects in question. And as happens in physics, such theoretic representations can be identified with convenient mathematical objects that represent object states. So the basic idea of a quantum approach to pattern recognition is the following: representing object states as pieces of quantum information. Pieces of quantum information are possible pure states of quantum systems that are storing the information in question. So let me very briefly recall that in the mathematical formalism of quantum theory, a pure state of a given quantum system, say an atom, a photon, is represented as a particular vector which lives in a special abstract space called Hilbert space. And according to a successful notation introduced by the physicist Paul Dirac, such vectors are usually indicated by these Greek letters, phi, psi, phi, chi, and so on, enclosed in these very special brackets that are also called cat brackets. So this is the symbolism that is usually applied in quantum mechanics. As mentioned before by Klaus Mainzer, what happens? A pure state psi may be a superposition of other pure states having the following form. Psi, the vector psi, may be represented as a vector sum of other vectors psi I, where each psi I has a numerical partner that is a particular complex number. From an intuitive point of view, a superposition state seems to describe a kind of ambiguous cloud of possibility, a set of potential properties that are in a sense all coexistence, And such coexistence is typically quantum. It does not exist in classical physics. In order to illustrate from an intuitive point of view this strange coexistence, sometimes one refers to a funny metaphor, the metaphor of a quantum skier who is able to run at the same time at the right side and at the left side of a given tree. Of course, in the real world, quantum skiers are impossible, but what is doing a quantum skier is actually happening, and this is very important, in quantum computers, because the mathematics of quantum computers is essentially based on the concept of quantum superposition that does not exist in classical physics and does not exist for classical computer. So we can now discuss in the quantum framework the problem: how is a concept C, say table, recognized on the basis of a previous experience? We suppose that at a given time, our Alice is interested in the concept C. Her previous experience concerning C can be described by the formal notion of quantum C dataset. What is a quantum C dataset? This is the formal definition. It is a sequence of 4 sets. First of all, we have the set ST, that is a finite set of pure state psi of a Hilbert space that has been associated to the concept C. The pure state psi, for which the question, does the object described by psi verify the concept C? This question can be reasonably asked. Then we have the set ST plus, that is a subset of the total set ST, consisting of all states that have been positively classified with respect to the concept C. And the elements of this set are called the positive instances of the concept C. Then we have the set ST minus, that is the set of the negative instances, and the set ST question mark, that is the set of the indeterminate instances. And these 3 sets shall be pairwise disjunct, and furthermore, the union shall be equal to the total set ST. Suppose then that at a later time, our Alice meets a new object described by the object state phi. Alice shall apply a rule that allows her to answer the question, does phi verify the concept C? And this answer shall be based on her previous knowledge that is represented by her quantum C dataset that has this canonical form. A winning strategy is based on the use of 2 special concepts. I have no time to give the technical definitions of this concept. Let me simply recall here that the quantum positive centroid and the quantum negative centroid are particular states of a given quantum C dataset that can be defined respectively as a convenient superposition of the positive instances of our quantum C dataset and a convenient superposition of the negative instances of the same quantum C dataset. The technical definition is a little bit more complicated, but this is perfectly the intuitive idea. Why are the positive centroid and the negative centroid so important? First of all, the concept of quantum positive centroid seems to represent a good mathematical simulation for our intuitive idea of Gestalt. Why? Because both the quantum positive centroid and the intuitive idea of Gestalt describe an imaginary object representing a vague and ambiguous idea that Alice has obtained as an abstraction from the real example she has met in her previous experience. And in order to obtain this result, it is essential to use the quantum theoretic formalism, because in classical pattern recognition questions, problems are dealt with in a quite different way. As is well known, human recognition and classifications are usually performed by means of a quick and mostly unconscious comparison between the main features of some new objects we have met and a gestaltic pattern that we had previously constructed in our mind. So in our quantum approach, we can simulate this human behavior by referring to a convenient class of quantum similarity relation that can be mathematically defined. I don't give here the precise mathematical definitions. Let me simply say here that once chosen an element from this class, a particular similarity relation, Alice has at her disposal the mathematical tools that allow her to face the classification problem. In this way, suppose that Alice's information about a concept C, say the concept table, is a quantum C data set that has this canonical form. We shall define a classifier function that assigns to every state phi, which describes an object that Alice may meet, either the value plus, corresponding to the answer yes, or the value minus, corresponding to the answer no, or the value question mark, corresponding to the answer perhaps. And this is the formal definition. The classifier function that is determined by the original quantum data set is a particular function indicated by CL that satisfies the following condition for any state phi of the Hilbert space that has been associated to our concept C. So this function CL assigns to the input phi the output plus if phi is similar to the positive centroid and is not similar to the negative centroid, the value minus in the opposite case, if phi is similar to the negative centroid and is not similar to the positive centroid, and the value question mark otherwise. And this is a definition that works from a technical point of view. So we can conclude from an intuitive point of view that although recognition procedures are of course different for human and for artificial intelligence, there is a common method of facing the problems that seems to work in both cases. And what happens in the case of recognitions of musical themes? Recognitions of musical themes can be formally dealt with as recognitions of concept in the framework of a special form of semantics that has been called quantum musical semantics. Let me very briefly recall that any musical composition, say sonata, symphony, can be described as consisting of three basic components. First of all, we have a score. We know very well that in some cases, a score is missing, for instance, in the case of jazz music. What is a score? A score is a syntactical object consisting of systems of signs. Then we have a set of performances, and performances are physical events that occur in space and time. And finally, we have a set of musical ideas, or call it also musical thoughts. What are musical ideas? Musical ideas are more mysterious elements that underlie and determine a given performance. This is the world where normally live composers and also conductors who are accustomed to study scores without any help of a material instrument. So the basic assumption of the quantum musical semantics is the following. Musical ideas can be formally described as pieces of quantum information. So following the quantum formalism, a musical idea can be represented in a non-unique way as a quantum superposition of other musical ideas. In this way, as we have done in the case of quantum pure states, this means that the musical idea mu alludes to the ideas me-I that are in a sense all coexistence, the same strange coexistence that we have seen in the case of our funny quantum skier, and the same coexistence that plays a very, very important role in the case of quantum computers. So in the framework of the quantum musical semantics, interpreting a score means associating to every musical phrase written in the score a meaning represented by a particular musical idea. And as happens in quantum theory, musical meanings behave in a holistic and contextual way. This means that the meaning of a global phrase determines the contextual meanings of all its well-formed parts, and generally not the other way around, as happens in classical semantics. And it is very well known that holism and contextuality play a very important role in any semantics of music. Let me refer to a very famous example, a trivial example. In the Ode to Joy, Andy Freud, in the last movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, as everybody knows, Andy Freud is first sung in the Ninth Symphony by the baritone solo, Freude, schöne Götterfunken, and so on. Everybody knows this melody. Let me very briefly indicate this fragment of the symphony score by phrase Freud. Different interpretations, which may depend on different choices of the conductor and of the baritone also, will associate to this phrase different musical ideas. So accordingly, any interpretation gives rise to a special map. The phrase Freud, which is a syntactical object, a system of signs, is transformed into a meaning represented by the musical idea that I have indicated here by Freud. Let us notice that this is a procedure that happens in any semantics. In any semantics, interpreting a language simply means associating a meaning to every well-formed expression of the language. And in our particular case, meanings are here represented by musical ideas that are dealt with as pieces of quantum information. And how are musical themes represented in these semantics? A musical theme is a more abstract concept that cannot be simply identified with a particular musical idea that interprets a given musical phrase. If mu is a musical idea, the musical theme expressed by me can be described as an invariant with respect to timbre and pitch transformations. So generally, a monodic musical theme can be represented as a sequence of melodic intervals embedded in a particular rhythmic structure, while a polyphonic theme can be described as a convenient system of monodic musical themes. In music recognitions, usually recognition concern not particular musical ideas, but rather musical themes, which can be regarded as playing the same role that in a different situation is played by concepts. So as we have done in the case of concepts, given a musical theme T, we can introduce the notion of quantum musical T dataset that will be a sequence of sets having this form, and this sequence is based on a finite set mi of musical idea, but the structure is the same structure that we have already seen in the case of concept. Suppose that T is the Freud theme. A quantum musical T dataset might represent the information that our agent Alice has about the Freud theme at a given time. And suppose that at a later time, Alice listens to the performance of a melody described by the musical idea Ni, the musical idea Nu, and asks her else, does Ni express the Freud theme? And she can apply the same procedure used for concepts by comparing this Nu with the positive centroid of her Freud quantum musical dataset. So Alice applies also in this case exactly the procedure that is applied in the case of concept, the formal procedure, of course. We know that any comparison implies the use of a convenient similarity relation. But musical similarities are generally more complex and even more subjective notions with respect to the similarity relations that are defined in quantum theory by means of very rigorous mathematical definitions. Musicians and musicologists used to distinguish different kinds of similarity: melodic, rhythmic, harmonic, timbric, and in many cases, it may be interesting to consider either a logical conjunction or a logical disjunction of different kinds of musical similarity. But once chosen a particular similarity relation, Alice can act like in the case of concepts and apply a convenient musical classifier by applying exactly the same method. As is well known, theme recognitions play a very important role in a special musical form that has crossed the history of music, the theme and variation form. In this case, what is called the theme is not an abstract theme. It is a particular musical phrase written at the beginning of the score and normally divided into two parts. And the theme is then followed by a given number of n, say n of variation. So every interpretation of the composition will give rise to a sequence of musical ideas where Mi0 interprets the theme, while Mi1, Mi2, and so on, Mi-n interpret the variations. By a convenient abstraction from the theme phrase and from its musical interpretation, Mi0, one can obtain an abstract theme, T, which behaves like a kind of ghost, appearing and disappearing in the different variations, sometimes very clearly, sometimes in a quite hidden and mysterious way. And just this appearing and disappearing of the abstract theme creates the special fascination that characterizes compositions in the theme and variation form. Also this time I would like to refer to Schubert, a composer whom I love very much. A very famous example, the fourth movement of Schubert's Forellen Quintet that probably everybody knows here. In this case, we shall take into account also another ghost, not only the theme. Another ghost that plays an important role. This ghost is the lead di Forelle that had been composed by Schubert 2 years before the quintet. So this is the lead, very well known, in eine Bellen, and so on and so on. Everybody knows this lead. And this wonderful lead is characterized by an intriguing entanglement of poetic and musical metaphors. The story of Di Forelle has sometimes been interpreted as an allusion to a dramatic destiny of a young woman. An important musical metaphor is represented by the acephalous sextuplets played by the piano that clearly evoke the darting of our Forelle that tries to escape the fisherman's menace. You see here just in the first bar, we have this acephalous sextuplet. Why acephalous? Because it begins with a pause. And this rhythmic structure is repeated almost in every bar of the lead. Of course, the notes are different, but the rhythmic structure is always the same. There are very few exceptions. In almost every bar of the lead, we have these particular rhythmic structures that evoke the darting of our Forelle. And at the end of the lead, a kind of miracle happens. Di Forelle is now dead. However, her darting seems to survive because the piano goes on playing the sextuplets without any ritardando. There is only a diminuendo, but no ritardando. So this might suggest the illusion of a kind of Platonic idea that is still alive, although separated from its original matter. Strangely enough, these very characteristic sextuplets only appear at the end of the quintet's movement, in the final allegretto, where the incipit of the lead is faithfully reproposed, almost faithfully, because in fact there are some variants with respect to the lead. The basic theme of the quintet is instead a rhythmic dotted variant of what is sung by the voice at the very beginning of the lead. So this is the theme of the quintet. A dotted variant, we have la 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 la, a dotted variant. And it is very interesting to compare the basic theme with the fifth variation, which is played by the cello. While the basic theme has a bright and joyful character, the fifth variation suggests a melancholic feeling. In spite of the musical differences, one can naturally sing the incipit of the first stanza of the lead, following the melodic lines of the first 8 bars of the cello variations. So this is what is played by the cello. And if you want to, we can sing in einen Bächlein helle, da schoss in froher Eil, and so on and so on. So we can say that the memory of the lead, but not only of the music of the lead, the memory of the text of the lead is somehow preserved almost in all variation, although with different semantic connotations. An intriguing general question that can be asked about any composition in the theme and variation form is the following. Is it possible to recognize a deepest musical thought that underlies both the basic theme Mi0 and all variations Mi-I? A quantum temptation might suggest to make recourse to the concept, to make recourse again to the concept of quantum superposition, because we might consider a kind of superior superposition of the theme theme and of all variation that has this form. It is a superposition of the basic theme and of all variations. Of course, one is dealing with a highly abstract musical idea that cannot be either written in a score or performed. However, it is not strange to suppose that the composer himself has been somehow inspired by a vague musical thought of this kind, an ambiguous musical gestalt that potentially refers to the whole structure of the composition. Of course, this is only a conjecture, and one shall ask the composers about these problems. But now perhaps my time is over, and I would like to conclude to a very general remark. Adopting a quantum approach to pattern recognition allows us to obtain some natural simulations for artificial intelligence of the intrinsic vagueness and ambiguity that characterize many human cognitive behaviors and characterize also musical behaviors. So I think that I will stop here, and I give you here only a very short list of references. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for a very interesting lecture. And now both lectures are open for discussion. Klaus, I'm sure you'll have a very interesting question. Yes, please. Please unmute yourself, Klaus.
Mute.
Okay.
It's more a comment or a question to both lecturers, because I think both have a lot of aspects in common. Let me start with Navid Bargrizan. He highlighted that below the different national compositions, the different cultures and musical structures in the different countries. You mentioned Persian music and Japanese examples and European examples and so on. There is a common, deeper structure. And in that context, you mentioned Chomsky with his linguistic approach, that there are different natural languages, and below the surface of these different national languages, there is a deeper structure, and the so-called Chomsky grammar. And actually, in a mathematical precise sense, the Chomsky grammar is equivalent to a Turing machine. And a Turing machine is a universal concept of a computational digital computer. So there is this kind of invariant structure. And the same idea with Marisa, namely that there are different thematic approaches in music. But you mentioned the centroids, and behind that the superposition idea. And behind these different expressions of musical themes, there is a common invariant structure, what you also compared with the idea of a gestalt psychology in the beginning of the last century, especially in the German psychological tradition, which in a deeper tradition is actually in the Platonic idea. So my question to both is that right? Because Navid Bargrizan also highlighted that his concept is in contradiction to what he called ideological concept. So what both have in common, in my interpretation, is that in music there is something invariant, and in a deeper sense, perhaps in a Platonic sense. Is that right? Or what are your comments to this interpretation?
May I say something?
Yes, please.
No, it's very simple. I agree deeply with you, Klaus. There are these very deep invariant structure that can be described in a very natural way by using the quantum theoretic formalism, because quantum similarities are more deep with respect to classical similarities. This might be a progress perhaps also for the actual artificial intelligence researchers, using this quantum theoretic concept instead of the classical concept. As to the ideology problems, I completely agree with you and with Navid also, of course. I always think that proposing an ideological attitude in music is a strong violence. Music cannot be a pure ideology. A pure ideology historically always gave rise to very bad examples of musical pieces. This is my opinion.
Well, I should also totally agree with you, Dr. Marisa. When we think about, the element of sound, which underpins any musical tradition and culture from ancient world up to today, they all, contain partials and partial tones and harmonics and inharmonics and combination tones and shadow tones and residual tones. Now, how they are organized and how they give different timbral, structural, and sort of elaboration of that musical construction, compositional construction, that's something else, of course, but they're all based on physical, mathematical, and psychoacoustical phenomena. And since the dawn of the time, of course, you know much better than me that, music has been perceived as being attached, you mentioned Platonic ideas, to the elements of the world, to the basic mathematical, geometrical, and physical sort of fundamental ideas in the world, in astronomy, and even in religion. When we think about, the Middle Ages and how before Renaissance, really the preference was given to sort of the how should I put that, the three divisions of the beat, or the tripartite divisions of the beat, because of Trinity, or when we think about, number 5, how it was perceived later, Trinity plus the hymns, which is also in the harmonic series, when we think about major chord as the basic of common practice music, with the, with its ratio 3:2, right? So it's also number 5 and refers to 3, refers to 2. So absolutely, they all contain the basic sort of scientific, but also basic syntactical idea. Now, how it's arranged and what semantics they produce, that's of course a different question.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Martin Kowalewski has a question. Please unmute. Oh, yeah, okay. We don't hear you. I think that I think that while you try to get in touch with us by voice,
you put it in the chat, the question or something.
Yeah.
You may write it,
oh,
because
that's right.
we do not hear you.
Meanwhile, maybe I can ask, well, I'm a medical doctor, so I'm not deeply understanding everything that was said, but I'd like to ask Maria Luisa Della Chiara about the first part. Well, actually, first I'd like to thank you to let me understand better Di Forelle. It was, but my question doesn't go to music, but to pattern recognition in general, or maybe even specific. If in Hilbert space, you said that if you have many patterns, that will be a kind of superpositions, and then a decision could be made whether something is, let's say, a table or not. But I think maybe there's something a bit more complicated, and maybe it would be interesting also to our colleague Ioannis. Let's say you find something, you ask a man or artificial intelligence what this would be. Then it's not so focused. Then you have many options, and maybe there's something you've never met before. Let's say in archaeology, maybe a piece. How would that work? Would that be so many different Hilbert spaces that somehow you would have to combine to find something, and probably you would only say maybe it is or maybe it is not?
Look, Martin has now the voice, but if Ioannis can answer now, this Martin can. But wait a minute, maybe Ioannis can answer.
No, it's okay.
Wait a minute, Martin.
No, it was a question
okay.
for Maria.
I don't want to add anything.
But Ioannis, I only said that he could be interested in that too. Maybe Maria can.
My idea is the following. The great force of the quantum theoretic formalism is that you can explain allusions, ambiguities, and also facts that you don't really know. What is bad, in my opinion, in the classical approach is that everything is precise because superpositions don't exist. And superpositions have this great force of having at the same time together different possibilities. And possibilities are a very strong and important concept because by using a concept of possibility, you can learn and know something even about facts that you don't really know. And the quantum notion of possibility is very, very strong and more realistic with respect to the classical notion of possibility that are studied in the framework of classical logic with modal logics, because in that case, you invent many different possible words. But with the quantum theoretic formalism, all these possibilities are in one single mathematical object, a pure state. And this gives rise to you, in my opinion, a great force, a great conceptual force. This represents really a great conceptual revolution with respect to the classical thinking. And I am convinced that the quantum theoretic formalism can be used in very usefully in many different fields, even very far from microphysics. But perhaps Roberto Giuliano might help me and say something about this.
I think that Martin was the first. Martin was the first.
Yes, I didn't follow the
Okay.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
okay. I have a question for the second speech, because in Gestalt theory, there's a set of laws when some things fit together to a Gestalt, and it produces a difference between figure and ground. Maybe it will be seen clearly and in the most simple way and such things. And there are also in psychology laws when things are received as belonging together, maybe the same starting time and such thing. Can you also formalize this abstraction, this laws, because this is not only a comparison of some objects of the same type, it's more some deductive we put on the perception. And for the first speech, I have the question, maybe are these very basic laws we are presenting, we have as natural beings which are living in the world and must come together in the normal world, maybe also a key to understand your music?
Okay, waiting for answer.
Yes, I think that this is possible, that what you are saying is, of course, possible. I agree with you. By the way, I wanted to say to Navid, my examples are, from the musical point of view, are always very classical, but I am convinced that this kind of analysis, of quantum analysis, might be applied to the kind of music, of contemporary music you are composing, because it is really a very general way of thinking, and applying this kind of musical analysis to contemporary music might be very interesting, in my opinion.
And now I think it's the question to Roberta Gentini.
Yes, thank you very much. I cannot say that I agree on the content because I am not the author, so I would like only to briefly comment on some possible development of this framework in the direction of the new approach to quantum machine learnings, in particular quantum neural networks. Because here we have a technical problem because the most demanding part of our approach is on the part of the training part, training our devices to learn from data. This is very demanding, and it happens also from the large language models. It's very demanding. So we could imagine, and our idea is a quantum neural network trained to approximate the classify function, approximate the training data process. In other words, the network, for example, takes as an input a quantum state, and through layers of the so-called parameterized quantum gates, it learns to associate to this state, to the quantum information, with the outcome plus positive, negative, or uncertain. So, and this is very important because now we are, so to say, we have a problem, a real problem from a computational point of view. How can we train in an efficient way, for example, with musical themes or musical samples, our classifiers? So the idea is to use again quantum formalism to train quantum neural networks. And this is, I think, is very important, and for new developments, and also specifically for musical ideas, because the encoding of musical ideas as quantum states and themes, as invariant structures, could be really very fertile ground for quantum generative models. So for large language model, and this model we know aim to interpolating, combining, generating new musical patterns in the spirit of quantum-inspired creativity, because in our ideas that a quantum-inspired machine learning, this idea, are also creative, are not also devices to classify something which is known, but also they are, so to say, so in the idea of the generative philosophy, so to say.
Thank you very much. And we are a bit late, but I'd like to listen to the question of Peter Hermann, please. You wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, just two questions in a way linking to the metaphors. Alice had been mentioned and the quantum skier. The Alice, the non-KI Alice can choose, or she sees a table, she recognizes a table and can say, okay, this is a table, but I wanted to sit on it. So she can use it in a different way. KI would not be, I think KI would not be able to this. Maybe it links to a little bit to the previous question. The other thing is in a way the same, the quantum skier can only go right and left. The sad thing is a natural skier can go against the tree or has to train to be really able to pass on one side or the other. Said in a way, you can choose another example where the outcome of going against the tree would be actually a more pleasant one. But this is a question of choice. Isn't that limited in these cases if you apply the quantum theoretical approach there?
Roberto,
Yeah.
would you like to answer?
Does your questions concern the quantum skier? I see behind you there is a two direction, autre direction. Which is a contradiction, so to say, because in your background, Professor Hellman. So this is. Does your questions concern let me understand the possibility, the idea of choosing the direction of the skill, of if could you explain again, please, this?
Yeah, it's in the one say with Alice, it's the choice of using actually what is the table, but you can use it in a different way, and the skier has the choice, the said choice to ski against the tree.
Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't, but that's at least an option. Where something theoretically, it's not, you have to pass it right or left.
Yeah, this is true, because this is choosing here means measure, measuring. So it's a different level, because this is you are in a superposed state as the quantum skier, and but at a micro level you cannot an electron cannot choose its direction. The direction is chosen by the observer, so to say. So it depends on the observation, depends on the measure, on the measurement. And this is the profound, the deep difference between the choice of real and actual skier and an electron. So it's just a metaphor of the quantum skier, which is something which is impossible from a classical point of view. It's the, let's say, it's possible, it's real in the quantum world.
The point is here that this metaphor of the non-classical skier depends on an interpretation with a classical picture, namely of a particle. If you think that the particle is like a billiard ball, then we will come to this tricky interpretation with the non-classical skier. But actually, mathematically, it is a question of probability. I think we should underline that. And you say possibilities in a philosophical sense. So in that sense, I think we should interpret the formalism because the classical pictures are insufficient.
I think that maybe in future we should organize a special set of lectures combining brain function, let's say occipital lobe, neural networks, and quantum computing. It would be very, very interesting. Yeah. I think that's Violeta. We have to think about that.
There is Professor Negri, because he is a composer in that team. We should hear him too, Dušan.
Thank you, Professor Mainzer. I am just a musicologist, not a composer, but I enjoyed deeply both the lectures, and thank you for the invitation. Just a comment about what Professor Šuput just told, and thinking of the mind, of the brain of a composer who conceives a set of variations on a given theme. As we have just listened to Marisa Dalla Chiara's presentation, a theme could correspond to a pure state of a quantum system, not a vague, ambiguous idea. It's an invariant, as she has told us. So in the mind of a composer who thinks of a set of variations on that pure state, on that given theme, he experiments a superposition of various pure states of a given quantum system, or not. Do you agree, Roberto and Marisa, with this ambiguous cloud of possibilities in the mind of a composer? in front of a given theme on which he wants to conceive a set of variations. There is a set of potential properties that are coexistent in his mind. Do you agree?
May I say something? Eleonora, I completely agree, because this was exactly my last conjecture, that we might refer to a very strange superposition that includes the theme and all variations, a very abstract concept. But I would like to ask the composers, does this pattern happen sometimes in the mind of a composer, or is this only a strange idea of a philosopher or of a logician? I would like very much to receive an answer from a composer.
Wonderful. We have here composers. Please, Titus, would you like to say something? We have also
But you are
Graham
a composer.
Waterhouse. I am also, of course,
Yes.
I am also.
Yes.
In fact, I'm very absolute fascinating for what happened today. I have the beginning that we begin a very long story, and with this new notion of coexistence, you really succeeded in giving the essence of what happens, not only in the mind of a composer, but also in the way we understand and feel music. And I remember, I think about this phenomenological aspect. The beginning coexists with the end of a piece. So it is a long story. And in fact, we need new notion, new ways for speaking about music. And with these new elements, new notions you mentioned today, we may also understand the music of other centuries. We find new ways of describing something which is not possible to describe. Nobody succeeded until now to speak and to tell in words what happens. What is music? What does music with us? No? But anyway, I would like to give the word to Titus, Graham Westerhouse. I saw him also, Vladimir Skolnik. We have composers here. Please, who would like to speak now?
I think it's even more, sorry to interrupt, I think it's more universal. Whenever you do or think, you have all the possibilities, and then you decide, or you just kill some possibilities and you choose one. And maybe you're still not satisfied. Maybe next step you choose another one. So I think
You're
it's
right, but it's something different with music, you know.
Yeah, but
if you think about, if you read a book, you need several hours to finish it. But if you listen once a symphony, and then you think about this symphony, you do not need the whole hours, because it is possible to project the whole symphony, which may be 1 hour, 1.5 hours, in a moment, I don't know, it's not good to say moment, but anyway, to feel it, that's why the phenomenological way of understanding music, as they saying the beginning coincidence is the same with the end. It's also the way of a phenomenal interpretation. I think about Sergio Celibidache, who spoke about this, and some interpretations of Celibidache are so magic you can't describe in words what happened there. It's a magical way of of making music. But you are also right. It's so many. Think about our memory. Think about our thoughts. But when we speak about music, it's something very special. It's not possible to compare with anything else. So that's why the language of a quantum way to understand the world, maybe it's nearer to the possibility to speak about music, to understand what happens.
So I have a question. First, you may see the painting behind me. It's a perfect example of a superposition and variations in it, actually. And very close to musical way of doing things. But my thing that I would like to get to Maria Luisa Dalla Chiara is what you told about the Hilbert space is astonishingly similar to neurological mechanisms of pattern building in the brain. But there is one big difference, actually. We do mark the patterns emotionally, which means the patterns are evaluated and either more appreciated or not, which goes over a quantitative aspect into an aspect of quality. So my question is, do you think there is any aspect in quantum mechanics that could actually also include this kind of quality aspect, which is not merely statistically driven anymore, but actually evaluates the patterns or the variations. So one may become more important than the other. They're not equal anymore.
I have no experience in this field, but this perspective seems to me quite reasonable. Perhaps it might be a hope and an attempt to work also in this direction. So this is a nice and interesting suggestion, it seems to me.
Yeah.
Roberto, do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. And because there are some, there are also some maybe speculative or I would say, philosophical interdisciplinary context where, for example, some where they are speculated concerning, for example, emotions, the emergence of emotions and other, let me say, non-rational aspects of our mind coming from quantum patterns. We know that there is an old tradition, for example, Penrose, Sir Roger Penrose talk about the emergence of our consciousness, from, and it tried to explain by purely quantum theoretical reason, but it didn't succeed. But there are other many recent projects. For example, here I'm in Germany now. Here in Ulm, I say in Ulm, there is a quantum. There is a center of quantum biology and quantum minds. So there are very recent studies that try to, so to say, to model also some aspects of our consciousness, of our emotions that are usually not neglected by the usual approach to this in these fields. Yeah. So it's inspiring, at least inspiring.
Okay,
I would be so happy, Navid, to listen to Navid also, Navid as a composer.
Yeah.
Navid?
Yes. Well, I mean, I should. I'm happy that I got to, know really, obviously, superficially, briefly about this approach. I do think that it will be quite useful as fresh way toward analysis. But I have to delve much deeper into that. I'm quite fascinated as a as a musicologist that briefly deals with sort of intersections with different sciences, and as an avid person who, as a hobby, is interested in physics and quantum physics, to explore that much more. But I wouldn't have much to say. As a composer, I should say that it's really difficult for me to pinpoint the way I approach. It's very different all the time. If the ideas are there at the beginning and I follow them, verbatim, to say so, it's hard to say. Very often I go toward a different direction as I presuppose, although I stay within the framework. And it's quite different in every single case. So it's hard for me to pinpoint. And I would be really interested to as I'm seeing the references here, and I took a photo of that to explore your approach much more.
Yeah, Violeta, I think you agree that it's been a very, very interesting evening, and that we really should take this path in looking into human brain combined with quantum computing and so on. It's nearly 8. So if you wish, we can continue, Violeta. It's up to you what to do now.
Oh, please, I'm not going to decide about. I am so happy if you are interested to remain, the one who are interested to remain, because it's a long story. Please, I myself, I would not like to decide to stop, but maybe. What do you say, Johannes, Klaus? What do you have to do?
I think we should now come to an end.
Yes.
But one point I want to highlight. First, concerning quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is mathematics. Hilbert is a mathematician. That was applied for the first by the physicists for elementary particles. But that's not the point. It is mathematical physics. That means it is a formalism. And mathematics is completely invariant to applications. It depends on measurements. If there are data fitting this formalism, then application is fine. And if these data are coming from music, then it is fine. And so it is a nice new expression. First point. The second point, as president of this academy, I'm actually fascinated by the idea that behind these different musical expressions, there may be something invariant. You know, we are living in a time of conflicts, national conflicts, so that is the surface. But behind that, below that, may there be a common structure in the sense that all people, all humans with different cultural, ideological educations, that they have some common infrastructure, mental infrastructure, and we should build on that. And music, I think, is a wonderful way to do that. And in that sense, I think that was a wonderful evening, because we were discussing these deep philosophical questions as well as very technical questions, and we should go on this way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say something, Violeta.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, Violeta?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would like actually to say I'm thinking on all this discussion and the two fantastic speakers, and I would like to suggest in the future, another colloquium to speakers to speak on the a critical way of what we traditionally we define as harmony, aesthetics, therapeutical effect of music to humans versus the modern AI, quantum computing, quantum theories, making music for the same purpose. I would like to see if the differences between the effects of this more mechanizing, I would say, music coming from physical phenomena with respect to the traditional, renaissances that are classical music that are influenced to the people.
Thank you so much. We shall maintain this impulses, this incipit for new meetings. And I think Bostian wanted also to say something. Bostian, unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you very much. But it was a slight misunderstanding.
Okay, then I
think it's time that
we say bye-bye. We thank you very much, and we hope
bye to all.
Bye.
Bye.
To see you
Bye-bye.
again in 2 weeks.
Oh.
Please come again.
Yes, 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 yes. Bye.
We hope so much to tell.
Bye-bye.